So we do have on the line a gentleman you know very, very well. He has been helping us throughout the years on the morning edition and trying to make sense of issues that come before us every day. He is attorney at law, chairman of the Tobago Business Chamber, and also former member of the Police Service Commission, Mr. Martin George. Mr. George, good morning and compliments of the season to you.
Yeah, hi, good morning to you, Marlon, and compliments in return, and good morning to all of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, and Mr. George, as I would have said earlier, you have been helping us over the years make sense of a number of things in Trinidad and Tobago, and we are in debt to you as it relates to that. But, Mr. George, I want you to make sense this morning as to what we have been seeing in recent days. Of course, the murder rate is now above 600. We had 4 murders overnight. There was a murder outside a police station on Saturday. As you look at all of this, all sides of the crime situation in Trinidad and Tobago, and as we get to the end of 2024, what's your synopsis of things?
Well, Marlon, the thing is, it appears to be a crisis of leadership, and I'll tell you why I say that. You look at a country like El Salvador, which not too long ago was one of the most murderous countries in the world. And under their new president, he has taken charge and has turned that country around to the point where it is now ranked among one of the safer cities in the region, and it is also, climbing up the ladder as one of the safer cities and countries in the world. So we have to recognize that these problems in Trinidad and Tobago, particularly with the management and dealing with the crime problem, these are not insurmountable problems. Trinidad and Tobago is small on the world scale in terms of our population size, our land area size. You look at a city, say for instance, like Toronto, which would have a resident population of maybe about 3 million. But during the day, that surges to about 7 million people, and you're talking about hundreds of different ethnicities. And look how very low their murder rate is. So it is a question of leadership. And that's what we've been lacking. And, we've seen the report where the head of the TTPS has expressed disappointment, and I think a similar sentiment was expressed by the Prime Minister of the country. And then they proceeded basically to point fingers at society and say, well, it's not us alone. You have a role to play. Of course, yes. We, the citizens, have a role to play, but the primary leadership role could never move from the responsibility of those charged with leadership of the TTPS, leadership of national security, and leadership of the country. And we need to be able to be frank and honest about that, Marlon. This has nothing to do with politics or, which party you support or anything of this sort. This has to do with supporting Trinidad and Tobago. Because, let me tell you, Marlon, we could write the playbook of how to destroy a country in a few short decades, We have moved from being the #1 country in the Caribbean. We are now at the bottom of the barrel. Guyana is laughing at us. Guyana is whining on us. They are rejoicing in the state of things in Trinidad and Tobago. And we are here sitting and fiddling while Rome continues to burn.
And Mr. George, I want to speak a little bit about the tone of the Prime Minister, and also, as you would have alluded to, the fact the police commissioner also. So let's deal with the statement, just a small piece of the Prime Minister's statement. He says, there is much more to be done in very many areas. It was my hope and genuine expectation that the ongoing national effort against violent crime, particularly murders and other violent assaults, would have seen a visible reduction in the number as we go forward. He says, unfortunately, even the significant efforts of the national security agencies have not deterred the criminal minds which operate as though without fear of detection and certainty of timely dissuading punishment. He says, I'm very disappointed, that's the Prime Minister, in the outturn where once again in this small nation, frequent killings see us for the second year straight recording over 600 deaths attributed to widespread violence. He says, as much as the police has done, they are required to do much more if the state objectives are to be attained.
Yeah, well, Marlon, the thing is, okay, let's start with, him speaking about the efforts of the national security apparatus. What are these efforts? As head of the National Security Council, maybe the Prime Minister can delve down into the details and let the population know what are these Herculean efforts that they've been making, so therefore we can assess for ourselves and see, maybe this strategy you employed didn't work here. Maybe we could try something different or something new, but we get nothing. All you get is a lot of fluff, a lot of spin, and the usual tired old platitudes. Oh, there will be in-your-face policing. What on earth does that mean? When you can't even identify the bandits. You're not in the bandits' face. You're in the face of the ordinary law-abiding citizens harassing and terrorizing them, but the bandits running free, then, there'll be more boots on the ground. Really? So where are the boots? Up in the air? If you understand me, these are the follies that we get coming from the police service each time in terms of, their responses to, the crime crisis, we will leave no stone unturned. Really? The bandits are not pelting stones. They're shooting bullets. Come on. The population has grown wary and wary of the police service and their responses and their excuses. And, regrettably, it had to be that the leadership of the country is mollycoddling the inefficiencies and incompetencies. Because, in other words, if you were so disappointed in the results, then what are you doing to reflect that disappointment? In other words, okay, Marlon, you have, you say, for instance, you are a teacher in a class and, a child has produced disappointing results. Then you do things to ensure that that child does better, or if you are a manager in a company and an employee is extremely disappointed repeatedly, then you have a chat with the employee. You say, well, listen, we can't continue this way. We have to part ways, So where is the result of the disappointment? What are you doing except coming on Facebook in the dead of night and expressing disappointment? Okay, so what actions are you taking after that? The population is not fooled by this, with the greatest of respect. Yeah. So, I understand the challenges, and nobody is at all, seeking to minimize the challenges of it, but I will always say it is not insurmountable, and I will always say the primary responsibility for managing the crime crisis rests with the TTPS, the Ministry of National Security, and the leadership of the country. And it must never shift. Don't care how much they try to throw stones back at the population and blame us and say, well, the criminals are coming from among your ranks. It's your problem. You have to deal with it. You have to fix your families, and you have to, go back to your churches and pray more. And all those things are good and right, and we have no problem with accepting that. Mm-hmm. However, don't try to shift the blame onto the population as if it's the population's fault that the crime rate is out of control. Yeah. It's a lack of leadership. End of story.
All right. I just want to read another paragraph from the Prime Minister's statement. And, of course, there are some who have criticized him heavily for this statement that I'm going to read here. So the government will continue to provide full support to the police and other agencies and encourages all stakeholders, and this is where he was criticized, all stakeholders from the home to the courthouse to provide no safe harbor and comfort to the criminal element which believes that it can plan, execute, and terrorize the nation with impunity. So again, it's not the first time that we have heard the Prime Minister speak about what's happening in the court. It's not we have even heard the National Security Minister speak about some of these rulings and judgments in the courts, and again telling the courts that they too have a role, Mr. George, in this fight against crime.
And of course the courts have a role in the fight against crime. But if it is that you are talking about the granting of bail, okay, which I know is something that you hear the police service lamenting about, that, this murderer or this criminal or this person was granted bail. The law provides for that. So, unless it is that a judicial officer is going outside of his or her remit and is actually breaking the law, then once the law provides for that, then it's pointless to be pointing fingers and, pelting stones at the judiciary, in that regard. Judges can't come out in a public forum, and, argue and, defend themselves, against criticism that is unfair. So therefore, it's really, I think another escape to try to simply say, well, it's the courthouse and it's, persons harboring criminals in their homes. Yes. Okay, yes, we understand that there are some families that do mollycoddle and encourage criminals in their homes. But the point is, it's the role of the police to find them and arrest them. End of story.
Mr. George, I just have about a minute again. I just have about a minute again, Mr. George. What's the next step? Where do we go from here? How does the future look in Trinidad and Tobago as it relates to crime, Mr. George?
Right. So what I'm saying is that, we at the Crime Stoppers, Trinidad and Tobago, we continue to provide the hotline whereby people can anonymously report crimes. So in other words, it's not that, people are doing nothing. We as a private sector group, we are doing our part. We are playing our part. We continue to play our part. We had a big rollout in Tobago. But at the end of the day, if we keep doing the same thing over and over, we can't expect different results. Don't care how much disappointment we want to express at night on Facebook.
Mr. George, let me say thank you very much for speaking with us this morning. We always appreciate your perspective. Thank you to you for your contributions over the years to the morning edition, and more so this year. As I say, Mr. George, sometimes we look to you to unravel the nonsense that we see in Trinidad and Tobago sometimes, and you always help us, assist us. And Mr. George, thank you very much, and we'll for sure we are going to be speaking in the new year. Bye for now.
Thank you, Marlon, and it's indeed a pleasure. I see this as part of the national nation-building effort.
Thanks again, Mr. George. Bye for now. We are going